Hello, and thank you for joining us for this virtual summit presentation, Why We Fly with Hawks. My name is Danny Shapiro, and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. Our speakers today are Professors Cindy Bond and Bethany Chandler of Butler Community College. Cindy Bond has been on the math faculty of Butler Community College in Kansas since 1995. She is currently a lead instructor in the math department and teaches the different levels of the algebra sequence. For the last several years, she has also been a lead in the math department's redesign efforts, the results of which were launched in fall 2017. Butler Community College's math redesign encompasses several facets, including instituting 5-week, 1-credit-hour modules, designing a placement for those modules, and establishing common exams, homework problem types, and department policies. The redesign received the Innovation Award from the Wichita Business Journal. Bethany Chandler is a lead math instructor at Butler Community College. She has been teaching developmental math for 23 years and has used Hawks in her online classes for 17 years. Bethany recently helped lead the math department in redesigning the developmental math sequence and college algebra courses from traditional 16-week, 3-hour math courses into 5-week, 1-hour modules. And before we jump into the presentation, I'd like to start things off with a video.
No one in my family is good at math.
I cried after almost every math exam.
I hate math. Math and I have never been friends.
I'm never going to use algebra.
I get so frustrated.
We found out that the students who weren't successful were just not completing their course or they weren't coming back. We had to try to find a way to reduce the amount of time the students were here and reduce the amount of money that they were spending. We had 12 modules that go all the way through college algebra. We took out the repetition. We created a My Math Plan assessment, which allows students to test out of material that they already know. It also kind of identifies where they need to start and that's a chance for them to be successful in that class.
With Butler's modules, we still have our face-to-face classes. We still have our instructors who are teaching. We're still giving the same content. But at the end of that 5 weeks, we give a final test over just 5 weeks worth of material. So a student can focus on 5 weeks worth of material, take a test, and actually earn their credit and keep it.
You take 3 5-week sections, and if you fail one, you can just take that part instead of taking everything over again.
I really struggled throughout school because of math. It's really kept me stuck in one place and really hard to move on to the next math class. So it's been really hard. Coming here has really helped.
That's the whole point of this, is to get students to graduate. And since college algebra is the requirement for the majority of our classes, we designed a way for students to be successful that also works in their life.
And now over to you, professors.
I'm sorry, well, let me share my screen. It says you cannot start screen share while others are sharing. Okay, are we good to go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for joining us today. That video was an overview of what we're doing with our math modules here at Butler Community College. And today in our presentation, we're going to share a little bit more about our module program and how we utilize the Hawks Learning platform, and probably share a little bit about how Hawks personal support has been an integral part of our successful implementation with modules. And so Cindy is going to start by giving an overview of how our module classes are set up.
Yes, hello everyone. A few years back, we were tasked as a math department to come up with a different program for our courses and our the way in which we teach math. And so after some research and time, we came up with the idea of teaching 5-week, 1-credit-hour modules And we began this launch in the fall of 2017, and we teach both face-to-face and online. But we chose not to do an emporium style, which is where students are in a classroom in varying courses, and the teacher primarily just individualizes their instruction. Instead, we are in a very traditional classroom where students come at the same placement into a course, and the teacher teaches in their normal fashion. So it's a little different than you may have seen before with this kind of setting with modules. It's mastery-based, as you may know, with Hawks, and we appreciate that. And we use Hawks with all of our modules.
Okay, so as Cindy mentioned, so prior to implementing modules, we had 3 developmental math courses, which were your typical pre-algebra, fundamentals, and intermediate algebra, followed by college algebra. And all of our courses were 3 credit-hour classes. They were 16 weeks long. So it meant that students could start, if they started in our lowest level developmental math course, they might have to take 2 years worth of math before even taking college algebra. And since we're a community college, we needed to find a way to help students get through their math courses more quickly. So our goal was to save students time and money, and we started looking at our own data. And when we looked at our students' progression through our developmental math sequence, we found that very few students who started the math sequence actually persisted to college algebra. And it wasn't necessarily that they weren't being successful in their courses, they just weren't enrolling, or they would put semesters in between enrolling, and they just didn't persist to college algebra. Additionally, we found that students who were dropping out of our sequence were more likely quitting because they quitting the class before the course was over. They weren't necessarily failing it, they were dropping out before completing the course. We also found that students who failed a course and retook it the very next semester were more likely to pass the course, and that similarly, students who passed the course and enrolled in the course the very next semester were most likely to pass the course. So as Cindy also mentioned, we researched a number of redesign options, including the co-requisite models, and decided that for our population of students that modules would work best for our students. With modules, each student has their own individual learning path. They take only the content that they need. In a traditional 16-week course, every student takes the exact same course and they go through it. They have to learn the same content regardless of what their individual skills or needs are. And as instructors, we know that every student has different strengths and weaknesses. And so by breaking the content down to where students only have to take the content that they need, it allows students to have a very specific individual learning path for each of them. And it takes away that situation in a traditional 16-week course where maybe you have a portion of the class that is bored in the beginning because they already know what they're doing, it's review for them. There's a portion of the class that's lost, and there's a portion that's kind of in the middle that teachers tend to teach to. So for us, being able to identify which parts of the course the student actually needed and they only had to take that part of the course, it helped with boredom and placement, and they didn't waste time in a course learning material that they had already mastered. Students also are not stuck in a 16-week course. If they take college algebra and get through the first half of a course in the traditional format, and then they get stuck or they get fail or a life event happens and they're not able to complete the course, they have to retake an entire 16-week course over, and they have to usually wait until the next semester starts. With modules, a lot of times they can finish, it's a 5-week class, they finish that, they get a grade for what they've done. If they have to step out for a 5-week portion of the course, it's not a problem. They don't lose anything. They come back the next 5 weeks and start right where they were. So they don't get stuck in that process of retaking semester after semester of one course. We took out the repeated content, and again, it's nice that they get to earn a letter grade at the end of each 5 weeks, so they get that. It can't be taken away from them, so they don't have to wait till the end of a 16-week term to get a grade. And ultimately, it just helps students save time and money. So our redesign, as we've mentioned several times, it looks like we took our traditional courses and broke them into 1-hour modules, and we did that. However, we didn't just look at the course and break it apart. We took a clean slate, wiped our slate clean, went to the state objectives, and looked to see what content do we have to have in there and what content do our students really need to be successful in college algebra. And then we created these 12 modules. The first 3 modules, our 050 series, is what would typically be pre-algebra content. The 060 is our fundamentals content, the 125 is intermediate algebra content, and then the 135 is college algebra. And that's something that's also unique to our modules. We have not found other colleges who modularized college algebra, but we did. We at Butler also, all of our degrees except for one require college algebra. So we don't have a lot of options for students to take statistics or liberal arts math or quantitative reasoning classes. Almost all of our students have to complete college algebra. Another important piece for our module design is our math lab. We have math labs we have 2 separate campuses. So there's math labs on each campus, and they're staffed with faculty and professional tutors. And that was very integral in helping our students be successful.
In the process of the redesign and the committee meeting to choose all that we came up with, we also decided to implement several policies that would actually raise the bar and raise the expectation for what we wanted for our students. One of those was to set our mastery level for all the homework assignments in Hawks to 80%. Now, not every assignment is 80%, but it's very close to that. And so we feel like that's an important feature, that each student on every homework assignment needs to meet that level of expectation. Also, another big change is we required that students complete each homework assignment, which in Hawks is called a certify, each certify prior to an exam. And so students cannot take an exam until all of their homework assignments are completed at the 80% level. So that was a big deal. That took a while for students to understand that they, yes, indeed, had to get all of their assignments done. And then when they took the test, the exam, they had to make a minimum score. And we only have one high-stakes exam for each of our 5-week module courses. And we have other aspects to the grade, including their homework and quizzes and things, but only one high-stakes exam, and it has to have a minimum score. Go ahead and change the screen, huh? Okay. There's other department-wide policies that we've included. For example, as a committee, prior to the launch of our redesign, we as a committee chose all of the homework problems, all of the test questions, even the study guide questions to prepare the students for the exams. So it was a huge task, but it was important that we were all on the same page and all had a common goal in mind. We also came up together after a lot of discussion with what the grade weights would be, the percentage that our exams would count, the percentage that homework would count, so that would not be up to the instructor. It would be a department-wide choice. Also, if you're familiar with Hawks, you know that Hawks has practice problems as well as their certified questions that count for their grade. And so after some time, we decided we were going to require that students do the practice problems, which don't count toward their grade, before their certified problems would open. And we went into that decision not knowing, how well that would go over, but I think in time students realize that by practicing ahead of time, they can be more successful once they get to certify, as well as understand in some problems cases how the input would work as they input it into the computer. We also came up with a standardized late penalty for the instructors to use for the students that are late with their certified assignments. On the exams, as a department, we decided that they could only use a formula sheet. The students can only use a formula sheet and a specified calculator. And we also came up with a standard makeup exam policy. So we feel like as a department, the policies are important to maintain and be consistent with, so that truly students can go from one 5-week module with one instructor to a different 5-week module with a different instructor and have pretty much the same experience. We feel like that's an important aspect. Now, how is it working? We feel like it's going very well. We have some data, and I'll show you in a couple slides in a minute, that show some of the percentages of improvement. But also, I might just mention on a more personal note, I guess, that in my classes, I really noticed a difference in their own self-motivation. I've taught for years, and I've taught a lot of traditional 16-week courses. And if students, didn't get an assignment done or didn't do well on a test, then they didn't seem necessarily over concerned because they thought, well, they'll just do better later. But unexpectedly, we found that in a 5-week course with a shorter to-do list, that students are much more apt to make sure they get it all done. And of course, they know they have to get those things done before they can take the exam anyway. And I've also noticed students spend a lot more time in their study guides preparing for the exam because of the minimum score aspect. So it really, I think, has made even a self-motivation difference, not just in a data sort of way. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So here's our data comparison for students earning a C or better. So the first column shows back in 2014-15 when we were just using a more traditional approach, 16-week classes. Some of our instructors were using Hawks, but not everyone. Anyway, and we didn't have the department policies, so each instructor was more or less doing their own thing. Those are the percentages given there. And then 2018 and 19 was actually the second year of our module program after we ironed out a few bugs. And you can see that it's made a difference, and especially in fundamentals of algebra with a 21% gain in students earning a C or better. But at every level, there's definitely a positive improvement. The next screen is showing our withdrawals. So you can see by that our withdrawals have certainly gone down, and we're very thankful for that. I really do think that students feel like they can conquer something when it's only 5 weeks long, even though almost every student enrolls for 3 5-week courses. They still view it as just a 5-week to-do list, a 5-week course that they have to conquer. So I think it's been a really good thing.
Okay, so in order for us to do modules, one of our biggest concerns was how are we going to place students into modules? And at the time, the Kansas Board of Regents was trying to coordinate placement policies across all of our community and technical colleges. And it was also at a time when Compass left and we were all switching to AccuPlacer. And so we were looking at all of the traditional placement tests and trying to figure out how on earth were we going to place them into these very specific modules. And We found out that the standardized tests were not adequate for the drill down of the content that we needed for our redesign. We had to have an assessment tool that was tailored to our specific curriculum, and Hawks delivered that for us. We are using the Hawks web test feature, and it's correlated to our math curriculum. We developed it with Hawks, and it covers our developmental math courses through college algebra. We do allow students to earn credit from the My Math Plan assessment in intermediate algebra and college algebra. If a student scores a 75% or better on any particular module, then they will still have to take at least one module, but once they take their one module, they will get the letter grade that they earned in the module for the module that they passed on the My Math Plan assessment. So we do allow students to earn letter grade credit from the My Math Plan assessment, and it really helps students to only have to conquer the specific content that they need. The kind of details of the My Math Plan assessment, we have 3 main assessments. The first one covers modules 1 through 6, the second one modules 4 through 9, and the third one modules 7 through 12. We currently have students who just walk in off the street and they're coming in the first time. They may maybe not even be registered at Butler yet, but when they come in, we place those students on My Math Plan assessment number 2, and if they test out of if they test into any modules from that test, then that's fine. But if they need to take a more refined placement test, they could take a pre-algebra standalone test or a college algebra standalone test. Students most often use the pre-algebra and the college algebra standalone test to test out of modules, and the initial My Math Plan assessment is really used more for placement. We do use ACT scores and transcripts and all of the traditional placement things to place students onto an individual My Math Plan assessment, but we are no longer using AccuPlacer or any other standardized test. We're using our own My Math Plan assessment to place all students into their math courses, college algebra and below. We have students are automatically logged into Hawks through Canvas, and each math plan assessment has 50 questions with about 8 to 10 questions per module. As I mentioned, we require a mastery of 75% on this assessment. Once a student has completed the My Math Plan assessment, they are given an individual report that looks like this. This was from My Math Plan assessment number 1, and this particular student passed out of 051, 053, and 065. So he or she would not have to take those particular courses. So for him or her, she or he would enroll in 052, 064, 065, and 066. So there are some features in Hawks that Sydney and I will kind of share along the way that we like. In particular for students, the temporary access code for students is important. Number 1, for students on the first day of class to be able to have access to the course materials right away. It also is an integral part of us being able to do the My Math Plan assessment so that students they don't have to register and sit down and come up with passwords and go through the whole registration process. The temporary access codes are what make our My Math Plan assessment process run very smoothly. The lifetime access code that students are given with Hawks is a money saver for students. For our students, they use one access code for the first 9 modules, and then they would buy a second access code for the college algebra modules. Additionally, if a student fails a course and they have to retake it, they don't have to buy another access code. If they step out for a little while, a year or two, whatever, come back, they can still use their old access code. If they move to another college that's using that book, it's their code, they get to use it. So it's a really nice feature of Hawks. They have content videos in the Learn and throughout the software, but they also have a website, Hawks TV, where they host videos that for every section of every textbook, and it's great for online students. It's great for all students, but it's helpful in online courses. Cindy, you want to talk about the next few?
The step-by-step tutorial is an important feature that my students enjoy using, where they can, especially if they have an error in a problem, they can see step-by-step what they need to do, as well as if they make a mistake, Hawks can sometimes tell through kind of an artificial intelligence feature what their error may have been. So if it was a simple error like a negative, then Hawks can tell a student it appears that you made an error in sign or something. So I think that's important for students to be able to understand. Also, Hawks has a way to create, for students to create and practice tests. And although as a department we made study guides for students to utilize to prepare for the exam, in Hawks they can also make their own practice tests. Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, so definitely the unlimited customized practice problems. A lot of returning adult students really just like to have unlimited practice. In the practice, students can choose to redo the same type of problem. If they need practice on a particular topic, they can continue and get unlimited practice problems on that particular type of problem. And so that's a great feature. And then customer service is available a lot. They have the 24-hour chat is available. And so online students can use that, you know, anytime, 3 a.m., whatever the time is, they're available. Hawks also has telephone support, and it's really nice to call and you get a human being that answers the phone. And so customer service can't be beat for students or for faculty. And for instructors, we use a lot of reports for various things, but on a day-to-day basis, the reports that we like to use a lot are the individual student grades. You can get a real quick snapshot very quickly of an individual student's grade. You can look at the overall class. You can open up the whole class and see very quickly the students that have late work, that have their work completed. It's color-coded system. It's very nice. You can see time in lesson for students, and this comes in handy when you have students who want to claim that they spent 15 hours working on one assignment and they just couldn't get through it. And then you go to look and see how long they did spend in practice or certify, and lo and behold, they might have only spent 2 minutes. So it's helpful in that regard to see that. It's also helpful to know if they did spend that much time, then you can look at that. You can see overall how much your courses are spending, everybody in the course is spending on each particular lesson. So you can get a lot of information. Last assignment completed, that's helpful to me as an online instructor when I have to put in the last date of attendance. And it will identify the last assignment that they completed, whether it was a certify, practice, or a web test. And that's important because when we do our last date of attendance, we can't just do the last date that they logged in. Ours has to be an academic learning activity. So that last assignment completed is a helpful report. The prerequisite report is something that I use before every test. So when I walk into my class, I have the prerequisite report with me, and it lets me know which students do not have their certifies complete. And so I can focus on those students and make sure that they get all of their certifies completed. And then the web test objective report, we use that for our My Math Plan assessment.
Now for instructors also, there's lots of ways to customize the course. So it's not something that you're just buying into whatever Hawks has set. there's lots of ways to customize. And so as a department, we did choose our different problems. Specifically, we could even do some specific things within the exam to make our own questions, but they also come with a rather large database of questions themselves. We set the mastery level, like I mentioned before, and the late penalty. There's also some instructional materials within the Learn method, as well as it comes with an ebook for the students. So there's some added features that way. As an instructor, you can set emails to go to students for various reasons, if they are late for assignments or different ways to do reminders to students. The lockdown browser is something we've begun using that we feel like is very vital to our testing atmosphere. Before we started using that, we felt like students occasionally would bring up other websites during a test, and if we didn't happen to catch them, then they could get answers to questions or even steps on a problem. So we've gone through Hawks to use their lockdown browser so that no other website can be opened during a test. And we're very thankful for that because we think that makes the test a little more reliable. And there's other ways that we were able to customize the course, but that covers quite a bit of it.
Yeah, I would just add that on the instructional materials, in the Learn part of Hawks, you can customize, you can put your own notes in, your own videos, you can really customize it to make it yours. And on the student reminders, again, I teach online, and so it's very helpful that they automatically go out. Like I have it set to go as a reminder for 2 days before the certified is due or a day before the test is due, and so it's very customizable, and it helps keep communication going with students. And so Hawks support team was very instrumental in helping us design and implement exactly what we wanted. So we had numerous hiccups along the way that were kind of make it, break it type scenarios for us. The most, I guess, the big challenge for us initially was the My Math Plan assessment and how were we going to get students placed. We had to have a test that was all multiple choice because these were students that were, coming in, and typically they would be taking AccuPlacer or Compass, and those are automatically graded. They're multiple choice questions, and so we needed for it to be that type of test. And initially we were pretty specific on how we wanted those the multiple choice question answers to be. And so we had a lot of customized questions there, and Hawks helped us create those. They do have a place where you can customize your own questions, but they were very helpful in that. We also had to make it so that when students did walk in, basically off the street, that we weren't adding a lot of time and frustration and paperwork for them to just get in and take a test. We needed for those tests to be about an hour. And so they worked with us to use those temp codes where a student can just log into Canvas and log straight into the My Math Plan assessment. So they didn't have to register with Hawks or create a password. And that was really important. If we weren't going to be able to figure that out, then, we were going to have some big administrative people standing in our way, advisors standing in our way. So we had to have that done. We also had to have a report that students could walk out of the testing center with to go to advising to know which modules they were going to take. And initially, that report in Hawks, the web test objective report in Hawks, initially gave you an entire class of people and not an individual report, but they worked with us and were able to give us that individual report. And also, along with the report, initially it said pass, fail, and the advisors were like, that's terrible, you can't hand that to students. So again, we worked with Hawks, and it says met, not met. That's a little more appropriate to hand to students. So there's just a plethora of things that showed up along the way where we really needed to customize what we were doing, and we were able to do that with Hawks and with their team of support that they have. Anything you want to add, Cindy?
I think that's it.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, professors. And thank you to our audience for attending the presentation today. If you do have questions, you have their contact information up here on the screen, and you can reach us at Hawks Learning at marketing@hawkslearning.com. We will be emailing you a link to all the sessions at the conclusion of our virtual summit. So thank you very much.